It's like, okay, let's do a podcast on, okay, do you know those mantis shrimp that we heard that Radio Lab for Kids have all those eyes, they can see all those colors? Cool, let's learn more about colors. And what do you mean? Oh yeah, did you know that like deer can't see they can't see oranges, which is why tigers are okay. Yeah, let's listen more about that. Let's watch a YouTube thing about that. Let's do another podcast about that. Let's go down this rabbit hole. Then we'll hear something new about like that baby fawns like are always born in threes. That's not true. But like then it's like, oh, let's find out why. Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience, Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take.
All right, Matt, we are back live via satellite. Not really, but you know what I mean. We are here with a guest. We have Bettina Schultz-Jobe with us. Matt, why don't you kick us off and let us know what we're getting into today?
We asked, because we did, I had to overcome we've loved the Montessori education that our daughter's gotten. Again, Montessori isn't just one thing. I should say particularly that we love Parkside Community School, where we sent her, And even within that, Max, to your point, I think there's massive variation within teachers, just from one teacher to the next. We've had really great teachers there. But one of the things that we asked them to overcome some of that, just trepidation around the not traditional route was where do your kids go when they age out of this school? How do they do when they go into public school? How do they do when they go into, maybe a private school that's more traditionally academically rigorous? And even talking to some families who had kids there who then went somewhere else to make sure that transition from this particular way of doing things to maybe a more typical or easier to find way of doing things wasn't too rough.
That's right. So that's another great question. Actually, a lot of parents ask me that is how would they go somewhere else, right? Will they be on level? So that's something we can always talk about. Well, you know what? We always are making sure kids are, quote, on level, public school level, right? With reading and with math and their ability to write stuff or type, right? The reading, writing, arithmetic, we try to keep them on level. Now, if there's a kiddo and the parents really they're behind, what's traditional, that's every kid's different. And we're okay getting off level, but they'll know we've gotten off level. They'll know we're doing third grade math when they should be doing fourth grade math.
What about the lingo? They say cook, no
What's
cap.
Cook? What's cook, no cap?
Oh, I don't know. They'll have to catch up with the lingo. I'll tell you, the lingo is happening in our homeschool co-op. So I don't know. It's amazing where it's
Our sons say cook, like, oh man, that cooks.
Oh, really?
Like something's really good, or I'm gonna cook you.
That's what you say. You say, oh, that fucks. So they're just doing a PG version of that.
Yeah.
That's good. So, all right. I want to ask you about something. And Max, I think this is similar to when you were saying that you had this feeling that, is homeschooling selfish as a parent because you just want them to be around you when really what they probably need more is to be around their peers. So, all right, two guys that you hear about a lot. So Gabor Mate, you hear talking about if kids get raised by other kids, it's Lord of the Flies. What they need is their caretakers. What they need is a deep connection with their parents. And then you'll hear John Haidt, who's probably most famous for talking about social media and its negative effects on kids. But another thing that he says a lot is we don't protect our kids nearly enough online and we hover over them way too much everywhere else. And actually, there's ways in which kids only develop if their caretakers are not there. And our kids now aren't getting nearly enough of that totally unsupervised go out in the world.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about those two things that at least seem to be in conflict and then talk about particularly that John Haidt concern of we aren't letting kids go run free without their caretakers enough. How do you think of that in a setting where you are around your kids more than you would be if you were just sending them off to public school 5 days a week?
So I don't know that we are. So here's what I've noticed in the homeschool world a lot is that there are people that their kids have lots and lots of time. Like our kids are in the tree, in the creek, on the trampoline, over in the, like, we're not with them all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're learning, actually our school, we don't have a playground right now, but what we do have is a humongous wall of all these bales of hay. And the kids are like all over, the bales of hay. Yep. And, we had conversation about risk management, because I'm not going to stand here and tell you that if you fall off the third layer of that bale of hay, you're going to break something. So like, how ought the behavior be up there, right? So in the homeschool, at least, I don't know if there's research on this. This is just anecdotal. But because kids are spending less time sitting and doing academics, they're spending less time at school. So generally in the pure homeschool world, I'm speaking to that, although like I said, we're started in the micro hybrid thing going on here. But in the homeschool world, people spend less time on academics. Well, probably the same amount once you add it all up, which means they do have the ability to be out and about more. Those kids are actually, anecdotally, I would say that they are less supervised. Now, climbing a tree or being on the trampoline or whatever they're doing out and about, right? They're less supervised there. They're more supervised online and things like that. And so you're going to see more of that. And I would say maybe that's one of the positives. If the parents really are there I don't know how you'd be there all the time. I've not been a full stay-at-home mom though, so I'm not good to speak to that.
Well, that's when I was saying,
I'd be like, no, get outside,
Go away.
Yeah, so Matt, what I was saying about the selfishness is like after, I had some freedom of time and space with the family, and we were like, hey, let's one of the options that popped into my head for a hot second, I heard of somebody who did this, sail around the world, live on a sailboat or a boat in the Mediterranean for a year or two, homeschool the kids. That's totally doable. But if it wasn't a necessity for me, like Bettina, it sounds like you guys had to be on the road for work. You homeschooled on the road. That choice for me just felt more selfish in the sense that like kids not having recess shenanigans or class parties or group projects or the smell of a scholastic book fair or the cafeteria. I mean, like these are things that like, I don't know, maybe it's just like I'm trying to have the kids relive what I consider a normal American childhood, but like those sorts of things I would never want them to not have, one. And then two, just like, this is a secondary point, not about the selfishness, but just about like why maybe, getting it beat into you by the man isn't a bad thing is like, there's so many, Gen Zers and then soon to be Gen Alphas, like entering the work world. Like it's not easy in your 20s, and it's a real wake up call how hard life is. And it's like, I worry that if I were to raise the kids my way, like the only option is entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Like if I said, hey, go work in your 20s and sit behind a desk for 8 years, which the world needs. We need to have people who are the trash people, maybe we'll have AI doing garbage work, but like that we need a lot of people that can be compliant and work through that. Find whether that's through breath work or chilling or just staring at the fucking clock. Like a large percentage of the world's population does that. I guess that's maybe, how our modern school system started.
Yeah.
But I did learn that. I learned how to
just suck it up and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, that is oftentimes the argument, right? Is in fact, you'll find there's whole books on it about that it was the Industrial Revolution really that led to the way that we school. And actually that happened before we even had all these child development experts that started saying, how do kids really learn, right? And that we were preparing people to be able to work in factories. And there's still some of that that's needed. Our world's also changing where now, I mean, that's my biased opinion, but I really do believe that as we move forward here in the next 20 or 30 years, that having the ability to think critically and problem solve is going to be in kind of high demand. I think but there is a place for being able, and you can in all kinds of school settings, you can help kids learn that there's a time and a place for sit down and do it, even though you don't want to and you don't want to learn it. It's hard to learn.
Right.
You have to do it anyway, right? Like, of course.
And what I really feel after like this chat is like, I think you are inspirational as a person and as a teacher. And I try to be like you with my kids outside of school. And I really do. And maybe that puts more on the parents, but I believe like my child's approach to learning is my responsibility, which I know is not how most Americans think, but school is just the place where they go do recess, do a little math. Like we've said it previously on the program, one of my kids is like probably 5 or 6 grades ahead in math. We're not going to skip him. It's not about that. It's like he's helping other kids in math, and then they actually have iPads, and he's like pushing forward into close to high school math now. So it's like, if you're going to just kick your kid out the door and it's like, go learn, I think there are some kids that I think the average kid would probably be better served going to your school. If they're just kicked out the door, go be with a random public school in America or Bettina school. I'd say that. But it's going to take leaning in on the parents' part regardless. Because one, you either got to find your school that is the good school that isn't going to lock them in the chokey, or even the public school. It's sorry, parents. It's like, it's on us to like instill that love of learning and like talk about, okay, if your kid's advanced in math, we don't need to complain and have them skip a grade. It's like, hey, talk with the teacher at the parent-teacher conference. Is there a way that our child could maybe help other kids? This is, or push forward on their own worksheets. Like I don't know, there's ways to do it.
Lots of ways. That's right. The only way is not to just leave the public school.
Right, because I think also then people also who maybe grew up going to private school or whatever, I know some people who they're just throwing their kids to private school because that's what they did growing up. And it's just like similar to maybe people are just going to public school because they did. And maybe there's a micro school that's a better option for their child. To your point, there could be a kid who just is not thriving in the public school setting. And maybe they're, something different with their brain or something. And a smaller setting, 6-on-1 micro school is the way for them. So, it's
or different with their brain or their body. I mean, I think that like, even within the Montessori setting where there's a lot more freedom of movement, my oldest daughter's teacher who loved her and they had a great relationship, and my daughter has really thrived there. She's done well, but still my teacher's like, she's got happy feet. And we just almost from the beginning, it's like, this kid can't be still. If we send this kid to an environment where she's got to be still, it doesn't matter if she's cognitively able to do the work. She's just going to have a hard time. She's got to move. So I do think fit is underrated. We get like stuck, like the fit between the kid and the school. We get stuck on like, I did it this way, or this private school is prestigious. Or I remember growing up in Houston, the most expensive private school was famously shitty. It was where like the rich dumbass kids went to meet other rich dumbass kids so they could then go sell real estate when they were older, and the world continues to go around. But like, so I think fit. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about is I was researching bike helmets recently. I had to get my daughter a bike helmet, and there's all this stuff about like rotational protection and da-da-da-da-da-da. And ultimately the thing I found that I liked was the best bike helmet that you can get is the one that your kid will wear, because them liking their bike helmet means they'll wear it, and any bike helmet is so much better than no bike helmet, that the best bike helmet you can get your kid is the one that they like. And we've talked over the years, because our school ages out after 9. They may add some years back in, but like, should we think about changing schools to a school where they'll be able to, go all the way through whatever?
Yeah.
But what I've always come back to is my daughter likes school.
Yeah.
Like when she's not bummed out when it's Monday. Yeah. I mean, sometimes she's like, oh, I like the weekend, but who doesn't like the weekend? Like in general, she goes to school excited. She comes home pleased. And it's like, that's the bike helmet she'll wear. So,
and she's learning stuff. She wrote, in fact, I have this lovely letter on my refrigerator right now that your daughter wrote
that's cool.
a year ago, which means she's learning how to write and spell and reading, writing, arithmetic, and loves school. right? In my mind, if education's not, my biased opinion, right? If the educational place where your kids are is not helping you learn to love learning, then we haven't done the thing. Like I want them to love to do it, right? And I love learning. I am like I don't have enough money and time to do all the trainings and all the learning I want to do all the time, right? I mean, it's actually with your wife, we're recently texting about getting our PhDs, but we've let that one go. So this is the thing is I think it's fascinating to learn stuff, and I want our kids to do that, right? So that later they at least have the skills to go learn what they want to learn to do the thing, whatever it is that they're going to do.
And
right?
the last little thing that you just made me think of is like, if you're listening right now, it's like, look, if you can find a Bettina in a micro school, in a public school, wherever you can find it, or if you can't, then it's you. It can be you as the parent that instills that love. And then even if they're locked in the chokey all day getting whipped, it'll all work out.
Yeah, maybe not that. But
research shows this, right? So little things like you need, there's so much, I keep getting the thumbs up because I'm doing, but number one, so I'm getting thumbs up. But we need to read with our kids, ideally read with our kids. They should see us reading. They see us learning. They see us being fascinated by things. They see us working hard. The parents are the most important part.
Totally.
Which is why I love the hybrid model, because I think that we are experts of our own children, and we should get to have input on their education. And that's why I like the hybrid micro school or the hybrid homeschool so much.
Totally.
And I think we need a village. I believe we need a village, which is why I personally prefer the hybrid. Because I don't want my kids to just, my husband jokes about this all the time. He goes, we can't just homeschool because their teachers would be idiots, right? Like, we don't want it to be just us. I don't want it to be just us. I want a village, but I like to get to have some input, and I want to have more input than I typically get in public. So,
No, and I think it's like, however you get there, like the same thing, like on the weekends. This episode is brought to you by the Milkless Patreon. If you want to keep listening, it's only going to cost $79.99 per month. We're going entirely offline, so you can no longer listen unless you pay $79.99 per month. Just kidding, it's fucking free. We're actually losing money on the episodes, but we love doing it for you. All we want is for you to tell a friend. Think about that one friend who listens to podcasts. They told you about serial podcasts. They told you about, and it's like, tell them about one.
Yeah.
And it's Milkless.
Just return the favor. The $79.99 does get you feet pics from Max. So if you're into that.
I'll be like, what are you guys learning about? And they'll say like, the marsh and cattails and saltgrass. I'm like, okay, let's like open the encyclopedia. Let's find some, let's Google it. Let's do some YouTube. Oh my God, did you know? And just doing that as a thing, then when next time they learn about it, it's not just rote memorization of, the circle of life in a salt marsh. It's like, they know more. I don't know. It's also just like, it's easier when you know more and you're coming into it. You're kind of already prepped and primed a little bit.
Oh my gosh. And Max, what you just said, like that's the number. This is like teaching our kids that their interests matter is so huge. What are you interested in? And I'm going to, go deeper with you in that. I was just telling somebody the other day that for a long time, I wanted to have like a wellness center, which is kind of what we're doing here, a wellness center in a space. And my dad and I started at one point, like looking at, he's like, you need like an island. This was when I was a teenager. You need your own island, right? And we would look for islands. And my dad was a real estate agent, so he'd send me stuff when I was at college all the time about islands that were for sale. And like, I learned that my interests matter and that I should follow them, like be interested and then like go somewhere with it, right? And that's what we're sometimes missing. If we don't do it at home, we're missing it in our school settings because there's rules about what we're supposed to be learning. So there's not time to follow the interest unless you're doing it at home. I just like for my kids to get to follow their interests more. I want them to get to do that more and learn that way. Part of why we're doing it differently. But like what you just said, where you're like cattails and like That's probably the most important thing we can do.
Because also then we're also not only like validating what they think is cool, but then it's also showing them that like, yo, the internet comes with some pretty cool shit. It's pretty toxic, but it's also like, we can find out anything we want.
Yeah.
And research like the whole drive. It's like, okay, let's do a podcast on, okay, do you know those mantis shrimp that we heard that Radio Lab for Kids have all those eyes, they can see all those colors? Cool, let's learn more about colors. And what do you mean? Oh yeah, did you know that like deer can't see they can't see oranges, which is why tigers are okay. Yeah, let's listen more about that. Let's watch a YouTube thing about that. Let's do another podcast about that. Let's go down this rabbit hole. Then we'll hear something new about like that baby fawns like are always born in threes. That's not true. But like then it's like, oh, let's find out why.
Yeah, I also like. There's also something about the way that y'all are talking about it that makes me think back to the emphasis, Bettina, that you put on project based. I always. And this is particular to me. Not everyone is this way, but I feel like I've never learned a fucking thing in my life that wasn't innate of doing something. If I want to do something, I become a voracious learner of all the things between me and it. But if somebody's just like, hey, you should know about this.
And I'm gonna test you on it.
Yeah. I'm like, I mean, even in high school, I remember my brother would make like a 93 in every class. And like the stuff that I was interested in where I felt like, oh, I can have a new idea about how to write this, or I can have a new story. Those classes I would ace. And the classes that I was like, I just know this is not my strength. I'm never going to use this. I can't see a practical application in my life. I'm not going to do calculus when I grow up. I just didn't do good in those classes because I like... Yeah. So the project-based thing is big. Yeah. The other thing sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is the other thing, and this is just one side of the argument, right? Is that then how much time did you waste needing to do calculus well enough to at least get a C when it could have been spent going so much deeper into something else? So you can find anecdotal stories all over, it's just anecdotal, right, about the homeschooling world where kids were like into their career at 20 for real, because they had time for it, right? Like there's only so much time. And so then, and there are a lot of kids that, man, we kind of torture them with algebra or whatever for a lot of years until they finally become an adult and they get to go, no, I get to choose what to learn and choose what kind of job to have. And I'm never going to need to do the calculus. Yeah. And so I do get that there is some, like I really do believe we ought to learn to play music, even if we're not going to be a musician, because of the development of our brain. So I'm not saying you don't learn calculus just because you don't want to do it, right? There's gray area. But I do think that it's like this idea that all education is selective. We can't know everything there is to know about everything. So we're always choosing what to learn. And why not choose stuff that's got like we have an innate interest in, that we can really learn it, right? That whole we're building synapses, because in project-based, 10 to 20 times you're getting a synapse instead of 400 times when you're not getting the experience of it. Project-based is experiential, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to pick on math. I have one of my best friends is a math whiz. And I remember he was so far off the charts in math. And then I remember one time he was like, can you read this English paper? Because I have to turn it in. And I read it and I was like, oh, you write it like a 4th grade level. And guess what? He's a radiologist. It doesn't fucking matter that he wrote it. He aced medical school. He like reads scans for the Houston Astros and Houston Rockets because he's so good at that. Yeah. And he's fine.
The other thing I'd say in math's defense though is like, I was one of the lucky people who like was always ahead of the curve. So it never freaked me out. Yeah, me too. With that said, it's like, I think math is beautiful and it's something that everyone should know. And I think it just gets this bad rap because it reminds me of like taking computer science in college. You fall behind, you're fucked. Like you just can't catch back up. And then it's always this big boogeyman that you never know, which is like, because I was good at math, I never let the class move on if I didn't understand. And I was also very confident as a kid. So I would just be like, nope, don't get it. And sometimes it didn't happen often, but like once every few months, I did not understand a concept, and I would not let the class move on for like 30 minutes until I got it. Because I kind of secretly thought, like, if I don't get it, none of these fucking
No
kids
one gets it.
No.
Yeah.
But I think we get lost in it. Whereas like, I think that it is like music. Math is like, it's logic. It's the language of the universe. It's so beautiful if you can get it. But I think that there's been if we're talking about like the failings of modern schooling, I think in math, it leaves kids behind for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think
you could say I was one of them. I loved math and science. They were my favorite subjects, still are probably. I loved it. And I also just recognize that we each have our own gifts and talents. And when we do more of a one size fits all for education, then what happens is we don't allow people to really dive in and get as good as they can at their craft and what it is that they're really going to be the best at. Even though I think everybody needs to do math, I think music and art and a lot of those kinds of things are a part of a good education because of what it does for our brain. Cursive writing, we learn cursive. Not our,
That's like fine motor as much as anything, right? The cursive.
Yeah. Well, the thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we can go into the whole cursive thing, but I won't say much. But what I will say is, there are areas of the brain that we know adults engage when they're problem solving, and children very seldom engage that area of the brain because their brain's not fully developed yet. But they engage it when they're learning to write cursive and they're writing it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, you could go on and on about that. So the thing is that I do understand that there's a reason, there's certain things we need to be learning. And when we can find a balance where we go, you know what? I mean, I know people who are wildly successful and can't do basic algebra, right? Or wildly successful and they could never, I was up last night till 1 a.m. writing a blog. They could never write a blog, so we have such limited time to get to specialize. And I think that when we can be in an environment where we can really follow an interest, we might be able to specialize better and earlier, potentially.
Well, and I think like some of what we're getting at too. I remember in high school when I was reading, I ended up being a philosophy major in college, and I was reading The Republic, which is like what made me want to do like ethical and political philosophy. And I remember I got to this part where Plato is basically like, yeah, and learn fucking math because it teaches you how to think, even if you don't like it. And I was like, damn it. So I don't think it's like just because you're not good at math and you don't like it, you shouldn't learn any. Right. But it's like, but I probably didn't need to be in like AP calculus when I was a senior in high school just for my college application. So I think what all of that points to is that the ability to just be more flexible in the way you learn is valuable because, of course, every single person is a different person. And we don't benefit from a society in which basically everyone is trying to develop the same skill set. That's like
I guess like my little like parting thoughts would just be like, also like, I feel like school is just like the prerequisites to learning. It's like, if the kids really want to learn something, I'm going to learn it with them over the weekend or at night or something. Like if we want to go deep into something, that's just like socialization, reps on reading. But like who teaches kids to read? The parents like kind of have to get that going. You got to start it. And then, once your kids can because if your kids can't read, the teachers will say like, hey, you got to kind of like read at bedtime. You guys reading? Like, let's get some of those like Cat in a Hat and a Bat books going. And then you get those going, parents get it going, kids read more at school. It's like reps. But like, that's like, Matt, what you're saying is like if the kid is showing an interest in storytelling, it's like, how cool would it be? Because how many times do they write a story in school? Once a year, they come home with that like shitty book that they made. Like that, it happens once a year. They should make a shitty book every weekend if they're that story kid. And it's like, oh, you want to make another book? We've never done that. Actually, that's a great idea. We should make a story. Remember you used to make those in school? We'd do them like once a year, once every 2 years. You'd write that story.
Yeah.
Why is that only once a year? You know, like that type of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
If that's the kid really likes that, imagine a little library at the end of a year and they've made like 9 books.
Yeah.
Like that's so cool. And
I think Max, you're really good about just bringing education into your family home life in a way that feels like fun, that doesn't feel like work, that feels like play. I think I could at times do more of that in my life. But I also think, okay, my oldest is going to school from 8:30 to 3 p.m. 5 days a week. I need that to be more than she's hanging out with other kids and getting reps. Like
that's
like
true.
that's a lot of time. I want that to be time well spent.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that happens, what I notice a couple, and I'm going to circle back to the selfish comment too, but I'm coming back to it. But the thing that happens when we start thinking about that we're responsible for the education as a homeschool parent, I've seen it happen with other parents, it happened with us, is that then everything becomes a learning opportunity. And it's just play. It's play and engagement and everything becomes a learning opportunity. And I will say, when I thought my kids were being educated, like, all the time, mostly not by me, I didn't feel the same way about that. I didn't think about, whatever, I'm doing dinner. I didn't think as much about can I quickly teach a little something about the fraction right now? Or I wasn't thinking as much about that. I noticed parents that when they start realizing and you can do that without homeschooling. This is what you're talking about, Max, which is being responsible for the learning at all times. We say this with the horses. They're learning at all times. You don't have to have stuck them in the round pen and start doing some work with the horse for them to be learning. They're learning when you feed them. They're learning every time you walk anywhere around them. They're learning with you. The same with the kids, right? And it's where, and this is not completely related, but we were talking about whether or not parents are selfish for keeping their kids around. And I do want to say that from my experience being around people who make alternative type education decisions, most of the time it's coming at major sacrifice to them. I do think there are probably this little situations where the parents really wanted to travel the world and then took the kids. And maybe it was more about what they wanted, not what their kids wanted. But what I see a lot is parents making some pretty, being a parent's hard. You have no time, no one can prepare you for that, how hard it is to work and raise a family. There's just no time, right? And most parents that have decided not to just do what we see as the normal way to do education, and they've switched into something different, most of the time it comes at major sacrifice to their time and to their finances for them.
True. Yeah. Good.
Most of the time.
Good. Great point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thanks for saying that.
Throw that in there.
Yeah, it's point well made.
I agree with that. And I think it's just misguided then. I mean, that's like the ultimate parental martyrdom. And it's just and again, I'm coming from a position where I have my own baggage, where I'm obviously have confirmation bias and am so I got my own shit and baggage to be well, this is why I have to defend it because I didn't do it. But so feel free to take that for what it is. But I also think that it's
we frequently
kids aren't so precious,
and we frequently, when my wife and I start to fret too much about any parenting decision we're making, my wife, and when you're a therapist, there's so much, right? It's easy to fret. And then I just have been a fretter since, my childhood. So anyways, when we're fretting about our kids too much, the phrase that we often return to is look, the proof is in the pudding. Our girls are fine. Our girls are doing good. Our girls are learning things. Our girls are, and I think that is the thing to continue to come back to. It's maybe your kids are in public school. How are they doing? How's their learning? How do they like school? Or maybe your kids are homeschooling. How are they doing with their peers? It's always work backwards from how is my kid? And Bettina, a big part of the reason you started the school is you tried a couple other things and you just saw with your kids, oh, my kid doesn't like learning anymore. So it's not working. So we got to do something different. And I think that could even, Max, I was thinking a lot, that could even come to, I never want to be the bulldozer parent that clears out everything in my kid's path, but I also would not leave my kid in a class with a shitty teacher for a whole year because I think you're right. It's the teacher is huge. The individual teacher is huge. Anyways,
Well, I was going to say, and Matt, it really is a privilege to have the choice to do that.
Yeah, it's huge.
I think there's a couple things, as you were talking, just because, having worked with families that have kids who are struggling, right, is that it's never an easy decision what to do about it, right? And I'm going to layer in on what you just said, which is not necessarily are my kids doing well, but like, are they doing well, and am I supporting them? Because they may have to stay. We really did have to. Yeah. We had to leave Cooper in an environment that actually I think he had a really great teacher, but it was a very edit out the word. Our oldest son, we had to leave our oldest son in an environment that really was not ideal for him. Yeah. And we both kept saying, life is hard. Like we all have to do hard things. Is he supported by us? And he was. He had support. Now, 2020 is always, much clearer, 2020 hindsight, right? But afterwards, there were some things that started kind of coming out where I was like, we should have pulled him earlier. I think we should have. I believe we should have pulled him earlier for sure. But you don't know it. And it doesn't mean it's a bad school. It's not a bad school. I actually kind of love that school in a lot of ways. It just wasn't a good school for him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, it's a privilege. The other thing is, it is a privilege to get to choose not to go the public school route. I mean, taxpayers, we pay, it's a lot of money to educate kids.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time. And, not everybody can do it. And approximately 15% of the world right now is choosing to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And probably for most people, it's not a choice. I would guess for the majority of people, it's not a choice. So then, how do you support them when, it's such a funny thing. It's like there's such an instinct as parents to not expose your kids to non-ideal situations. There's such an instinct to protect them. The tree in the wind is a good kind of image to hold in your mind. The tree in the wind, and then you support them. Yeah.
And the thing that's hard, as always, is there is no answer. It's basically like, look, this is going to be taken in two different ways by two different people. If it's like, if your kid is thriving or not thriving, then blah, 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 act accordingly. There's going to be some psycho parents because the kid got, hit in the face one time by some crazy girl. They're going to pull him. It's an unsafe environment. It was a normal punch in the face that happens to everybody one time in their childhood. And that kid is now homeschooled forever, and the parents are overwhelmed and depressed, and it's a horrible situation. There's another one where the child is just not thriving for whatever reason. This kid is just is not going to do well in this school, and that kid would thrive in a micro school or a smaller, different environment. So it's like ultimately only you can stop forest fires.
Let me brag on my mom for a second, because there's this story of her doing something right. So we had to, in kindergarten or first grade at my school, we had to hold hands when we were walking from our classroom to the cafeteria. You had to hold hands with a buddy. And one day I got paired with a buddy that I knew was a sociopath. This kid was just an insane, he was just a mess. And I was like, I don't want to hold hands with this kid, but them's the rules. And he was in my class, so I had to hold hands with this kid. And he tried to break my finger. He grabbed my middle finger and he bent it back as far as he could. And I don't remember thinking about this, but I just turned and I kicked him in the balls as hard as I could. And I really kind of laid him out. And I got sent to the office for kicking another student in the balls, because it's frowned upon. And I remember my mom, they called my mom. She came to school. There I am in the office. And they're like, your son kicked somebody. And she turned to me and she said, what happened? And I was like, well, it's this crazy kid that I always talk about how crazy he is. And he tried to break my finger. So I kicked him. And my mom turned to the school counselor and was like, what's the problem here? And so that was a shitty thing that happened where my mom had my back. And I remember that story fondly because my parents had my back. So yeah, it's like things that appear to be bad aren't even necessarily bad as long as you're not doing them alone.
That's exactly right. And actually that is well researched. What makes something trauma is not that it was a hard thing, right? that it was a hard thing and you were alone in it. And that has all to do with the psychology of relationships and the way our brain develops.
Yep.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Not being alone in the hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Sweet. I think we
thanks
solved it.
I think we got it. Yeah. I mean, they've been trying to solve education for a long time. It only took us like an hour and 45.
Oh my God, right? We should talk more often.
Truthfully, you came in with a lot of this. You came in with a lot of the solve already done. Thank you. All right. Well, really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for spending the time. Yeah. What you're doing sounds just very, very cool.
Thank you for having me. Let me talk about my passion project.
Yeah.
This episode of Milkless is brought to you by Violet Archer in the case of the Purple Martin. Thank you. Bye.